I don't sound like an asthmatic hamster, do I?
You're listening to Widowed AF with
Rosie Moss
and Lucinda Boast.
We've invited some members of the world's most exclusive club to bravely share their stories.
Join us for some honest conversations about living a different life, the crushing lows, the surprising highs, and everything in between.
Please note this is a podcast about death. Carefully read the episode descriptions and be kind to yourself.
But for now, welcome to our podcast.
Let's begin. Hello and welcome back to Widowed AF. You've got Rosie Moss here with you today, and my guest host today is Jonathan Moss. Hello, John, and welcome back to Widowed AF.
Hi, Rose. Hi, everybody.
So I'm going to address something, a little bit of admin straight off the bat this week. And it gives me no pleasure to tell you this, guys, but Lulu is going to be taking a break from WAF. It is not a personal affront. It is very much a decision based on her current circumstances. She's waiting on an operation to remove her gallbladder, which is causing her an immense amount of pain. And she's having to manage her, in the neurodivergent world, we call them spoons. And she just hasn't got the bandwidth at the moment. So she will always be a part of WAF, and I hope very much she will come back to us, and she will always be very much a part of our family. Yeah, I can feel myself getting emotional. It's like she's died. She hasn't, guys. She hasn't, I promise. And, she will be welcome back whenever she is ready, and there's no animosity and no bad feeling. And if you would like to reach out to her, she has access to the Widowed AF Instagram, Facebook, everything like that. You can still contact her. And I dare say she'll pop up every now and then and say hello. So I'm sure you'll all join me in wishing her a very swift recovery, and we look forward to welcoming her back when she's ready. So for now, more often than not, you'll probably have the lovely Jonathan joining me. And then I've had the idea of perhaps inviting back some former guests to join me in these sort of wash-up conversations. So if there's anybody that you really related to or that resonated with you, please do let me know, and I can certainly try and get them back on for you. I can't guarantee they will, but I can certainly ask the question. And along with that, really, is just if you've got any topics that you would love to hear, or I'm going to tentatively say any questions you'd like to ask me or John. We can't guarantee that we will always answer them, but we will do our best. And you can contact us either via our emails and everything that are on our website, but also I need somebody to talk to me about Instagram, because I don't know how Instagram works. We seem to have a pitiful amount of followers. So if anybody has any bright ideas for Instagram, but also please do follow it. It's widowed_AF, and you can message us on there as well. So now that little bit of housekeeping is over and done with, we're going to bring you all back to Monday's episode, which was the delightful Laura Malin. John, any take from that?
Well, again, what a story. And it highlights this point that you don't really think about, is when people have these terminal diagnoses, you live under a shadow of death, and it never really goes away from them. And I remember, well, I didn't so much live under a shadow of death. I lived under a shadow of cancer, because it didn't become terminal until the final 2 weeks. So I could sort of relate to the last 2 weeks, but not for over a length of time. And just that must be so incredibly stressful.
Yes, I can't even begin to imagine what living under that constant fear is. I mean, we talk a lot about this kind of fight or flight hormone that we have surging through our bodies. And I can only imagine that starts a lot sooner in people that lose somebody to a terminal illness, because you're preparing for this all the time, and you're waiting on doctors, you're waiting on information. We talk quite a bit how you have to become a medical expert in that particular field almost overnight in order to comprehend what's being said to you.
Yeah.
And I mean, Adam sounds like he literally squeezed every last drop out of his life.
Most definitely, yeah, most definitely.
I love that they got married, and the ice cream boat at the beach. I want an ice cream boat on the beach. Do you reckon we can another one?
I've never seen an ice cream boat, and I think we need to go down Sandbanks and find this ice cream boat.
Oh, I'm furious that I've never seen an ice cream boat. I think we definitely will go to Sandbanks, yeah. I mean, another thing that has come up a little bit in listener reactions has been the end. And Laura also talked, didn't she, very beautifully about his death. And it's one of the things that our listeners have picked up on. And it's the idea that of having a good death, a death surrounded by people that you love. In this case, his mother held his head and stroked him and told him that he could go and that she loved him. And as a mother, I found that very difficult to listen to. As a human, I found that very difficult to listen to, because nothing could possibly prepare you for that. And for Laura to be so generous of spirit that she wanted them to be there too, because people can be quite possessive around death as well. And I do, again, I think that speaks volumes about her and the relationship that Adam had with his family. So yeah, I think it was quite moving to hear that, and the vulnerability, and I suppose the childlike state that they become at the end.
Yeah.
So I was very proud of her, if that's the right word, for being able to share that, because I do think we don't talk about the very end bit. It's one of the questions I dread asking people, because I really feel like I'm pushing them into a very uncomfortable place. But most people are actually quite, is glad the right word, relieved to have a chance to speak about it, aren't they?
Yeah. Like, when Sarah passed, it was similar. And I remember, I think I got through about a year or two's healing, thinking back to the last 15 minutes of her life and thinking, well, actually, if you've got no choice but to leave this earth, then that was probably one of the best ones I could have done for her. Her friends were there, her
Yeah.
sister, her mum, I was there, and we were recounting stories of her being drunk at university. Like, I explained in my episode. So it might be one of the only gifts cancer can give us, as opposed to other kinds of deaths.
I think you're absolutely right, John. I really do. I think cancer steals so much of the person that they are, so much of your life together before they die. And if it's going to give you any gift at all, it is often the opportunity to say goodbye and to do it in the way that you choose. She also describes this, feeling of the universe being out to get you, which I can relate to so much to this. It just felt like you're reeling from the magnitude of this enormous blow. But it doesn't mean that you're then invincible. And somebody said to me this quite early on. They said, just because the most terrible thing has happened, you're not immune. And I was like, what? And of course you're not. Look at Jess. It happened twice to her. Look at Laura, she got breast cancer. Look at you nearly dying of COVID. Just because one awful thing happens to you, you're not immune. On that cheery note, though, I really, really enjoyed listening to Laura talk about turning up at his house absolutely blotto.
Yeah.
This was, sorry, I digress. Sorry, this is the new partner. So she's in a relationship with another widow, which is really lovely. We're going to talk about that in a little minute. But she got very, very drunk and turned up at his house, and it was like something out of a Carry On film from the sounds of it. It sounds absolutely
It definitely
hilarious.
sounded like he didn't have a choice in the matter. She was going to visit him regardless, which probably sees why they'd formed a relationship.
Well, it's reminded me a little bit of me sort of accosting you through the window of a car and snogging you, rather out of the blue on our first. I can't even call it a date, because we'd just gone out for dinner as mates, hadn't we? And you said to me afterwards that it would have taken months for you to make the first move.
Yeah, without a doubt it would have, yeah.
So sometimes what you need is a drunk woman to make the first move, is what we're saying here.
To be honest, it's better than a drunk man making a move. Let's say that much.
Yeah, this is true. This is true. Yes, I will give you that. Well, I mean, I'd be interested to hear from our listeners what sort of slightly crackers behaviour you got up to in the early days of grief. I can probably list a few myself, but I'll let you guys come up with some first before I bear too much of my own soul. Anyway, this chap that she drunkenly accosted ended up becoming her boyfriend, and they've been together. They have a home together. They built a life together. And he's also widowed as well, which does seem to be quite a common theme within the widowed community, that we're drawn to one another, aren't we? And those that go on to have new relationships, often, not always, certainly not always, but quite often do end up together. Why do you think that?
I think it's because we're over the first hurdle. Like, we know we're widowed, and we know the person that we're now dating is still in love with the person they lost. And you're not having a relationship with them both, but they are very much a part of their life. And jealousy has to go away. You can't be jealous of a dead person. It's impossible.
You're so right. And much like Camilla and Charles, it's not just us two in this marriage, is it, or this relationship? We talk quite a lot about having lots of photographs of Sarah and Ben around the house. I put a picture up onto Instagram just to demonstrate, how kind of in the belly of our house these photos are. They're not tucked away in bedrooms and bedside cabinets. They are on display everywhere. And that, for us, was the right thing to do. It meant that we didn't feel like we were replacing them, if that makes sense. And especially not for the children, because obviously that was, a very real and a kind of fundamental fear when you embark onto a new relationship is, will the children think I'm trying to replace their dad? Or, would Holly think I was trying to replace her mum? So we've had lots and lots of conversations. We're a big talking family. They don't always want to listen to us, it has to be said, but we do talk a lot. And we do talk very casually about Ben and Sarah. We remark every now and then, oh
Yeah.
gosh, you look like your mum today, Holly, and that sort of stuff, because that way you normalise them and you keep them not alive, because chance to be a fine thing, right? But we keep them present and the thought of them alive, because I struggle sometimes to recall the intonation in Ben's voice, or the way he walks, or the way he laughs. Of course I do. So for those children who lost somebody they love so young, keeping that memory alive is very, very important.
Yeah, and they're part of the fabric of our family.
Of course they are, of course. And it sounds like a bit icky in a way, but this wouldn't exist without them. I mean, not that I'm wishing to not pee. Oh God, you can talk yourself in knots, can't you? But essentially, I think what I'm trying to say is trying to push them into the shadows and the darkness, and only talking about them on anniversaries. And I tried to kind of get my eldest to engage with me on the death anniversary this year, and he didn't really want to. And it was only when I spoke to a friend who'd lost her father young, and she said, I didn't used to want to do that either. My mum used to kind of try and force me to feel things on certain days. And she said, and you can't do that and like, made me really reevaluate how I approach managing their grief. And I do genuinely think sometimes it is better just to constantly, well, not constantly, Jesus Christ, that'd be tedious, but regularly drop in their name and little snippets of information about them, because we are the keepers of their information now. There are little, when you're in a relationship with someone, there's stuff you know about them that nobody else does, and it's our role then to tell the children. And I've got a book for Ben's mum to fill in, which is about his childhood and stuff. So because her memory, there's memories of him at that age locked into her, and I want them for the children too. So yeah, I guess it's all talk a lot and don't hide
it's
them.
a bit of a weird balance, because on the one hand you hear stories from the people that lost their parents who are our generation when they were young, and it was no one spoke about them. They disappeared. It was like they never existed. And I certainly didn't want that for Holly, and I know you certainly didn't want that for Ben.
Yeah.
But then you can't just sit and constantly try and get the kids to talk about them. They have to bring it to you, and then on top of that, you have to watch them grieve as well. It's a very difficult tightrope process.
And I think that's it. It's trying to figure out how much grief they should be feeling and how it shows and manifests itself in a child. Because we've talked quite a lot about when we had to tell them that they had died. And after the initial, horrible noise that we speak about, they then almost appeared to be completely unscathed by it. And of course, they're not. It comes out in behavioural issues. It comes out in not sleeping. It comes out in bedwetting, attachment, all these sorts of things, not specific to my kids, but universally, they express their grief in very different ways. So it's learning how to identify those things and when you need to interject, when you need to support them. But I think by talking about their parent or whoever it is they've lost, because it could be a grandparent, it could be a sister, but we primarily talk about parents here, and then normalising these conversations so that if they want to ask a question, it's just a normal conversation. It's not, oh, I really want to ask this about Dad, but I don't want to upset Mum. Does that make sense? And that's difficult in the early days. And I've talked a lot about my son Hector, he's autistic, and he has quite a black and white view of the world, and he needed to know in quite a lot of factual detail what had happened to his dad, which I wasn't always able to give him because of the nature of how Ben died. And I'm not going to lie, it was quite difficult sometimes, because the questions Hector wanted answered were things I didn't want to think about. But if that happens, maybe you can bring in a professional or a friend and say, look, if they've got questions about this, can I get them to ask you? But really, as much as you possibly can answer yourself, you should try, because communication, especially when you've got grieving children, is absolutely vital.
It was quite awkward with Holly earlier, because all the people at the hospice had said, like, you must express your emotion, let them see you cry, let them see it's okay to cry. But what Holly went in reverse. If she saw me cry, she tried to stop me crying. And then she actually started to stop talking about Sarah or asking questions for fear of upsetting me. So I actually, for a period of about 6 months, I just had to swallow it down. And then we slowly introduced it back. She's good now, and she's not that way. But when it first happened, she did not want to see me cry.
Yeah. But that speaks volumes about her as a person, Jon, doesn't it? And also, I don't know, about the things we do as parents. You took that locking down of the feelings for a little bit. And it's actually Monty's birthday today. So we're recording this on Thursday, and it's Monty's 13th birthday. So I've gone off at a tangent. We know this happens sometimes. And I woke up this morning with this just weight on my chest, because my boy's a teenager. Like, that's a big deal, and his dad's not here to see it. And ordinarily, I would have done just what you've described. I would have squashed it down into my belly, and I would have plastered my smile on, and I would have gone and, done the cake in the morning and all the things I still did anyway. But first I had a cry, and I had a good old sob. And then I went up to Monty's room and I cried on him. Then I came downstairs and I cried on you. And by the time the rest of the tribe assembled for the birthday breakfast, I was done. I'd cried. I was now happy and ready to celebrate my son's birthday. So I don't know whether that's imparting a wisdom or just an insight into my crazy head, but I do think sometimes allow yourself to have that cry. If you feel that lump in your throat or your belly, your body's telling you you've got to get some emotion out.
Definitely. And I didn't hold back. I just hid it from Holly. So I'd be in the bedroom and I'd still get it out because it's very important to sit with your grief. That's how we process. But it's if she came and I'd say, "Oh, just give me a minute," and I'd sort of dust myself until we got to the point where she could talk about it.
I've talked about the laundry basket, haven't I? I had a laundry basket, and my mum would see me starting to go, and she'd just go, "Laundry basket," and I'd just leg it and put my head into this laundry basket, which I had in the kitchen downstairs, and just kind of howl into dirty underwear, I suppose. I mean, looking back, it sounds quite unsavoury. It worked at the time, it was what I needed to do, because I was able to allow the children to see a level of emotion, but I didn't want them to ever see that real pain, the anguish, the agony, I guess, because I knew that would be very distressing for them. We talked a little bit about photographs, John. Another one that's come up is wedding rings. And I asked you the other day, didn't I, if you would mind if I put my old wedding ring, engagement ring on, my ring from Ben on. And you, without hesitation, said, of course not. And I don't know why I decided I wanted to do it, actually. I suppose maybe doing this, maybe the work I'm doing with the therapy and all that sort of business has made me feel a need to be connected to him. I suspect if I had his wedding ring, I might have had that made into something and worn that, but it's at the bottom of the channel, so what can you do? But I'm having mine made into a completely different piece of jewellery and a ring, so that I can wear it as a separate piece of jewellery. But I feel now that I will be able to look down at my right hand, and because I will wear it on my right hand, because I'm married to you as well, and I will look at it and I will smile now, and I will feel this. I will remember that shop in Rome where he proposed, and I will remember the dopey look on his face and the happiness of our wedding and the life we had. Whereas before, I found it just too painful. I found it just too painful to look at it. All it did was taunted me with what I'd lost. So, and then I lost weight as we were wanting to do, not deliberately. I hasten to add, it was a Pringle and wine diet, not recommended. And my rings started to slide, and I was so scared I would lose them, and I took them off, and then I never put them back on again. And I don't know. It didn't. Well, they don't really fit my right hand, I suppose. That's probably why I've got a slightly fatter right hand. But yeah, again, I suppose it's very personal choice, isn't it? Some people wear them on a necklace. Some people never take them off at all.
I don't really wear much jewellery, so that's not something I do.
No, but you have the watch that Sarah got you.
So I have one that was an engagement present.
That's it. I knew it had significant meaning, and that's the thing with men. There's not much. You don't have many bits and pieces. When men die, they don't tend to leave behind quite as much sort of stuff, jewellery. I know many men do wear jewellery, but Ben wasn't a jewellery wearer. He wore one ring, his wedding ring, and a very crappy watch that I bought him about 15 years ago, which he was very attached to and wouldn't change. And I do have the watch, but I don't obviously have the ring. But I take a certain amount of comfort. I mean, it's all relative, and there's not a huge amount of comfort in it, but a little comfort from the fact that wherever he is under the ocean, he's wearing it. So we are united by that ring to a certain degree. Sorry, that's making my face tingle. And I'm looking forward to seeing what they create, and I will share it on the socials so people can have a little look and maybe share yours back, because I know people do. A few people have memorial tattoos. In fact, Laura, she's had a memorial tattoo, hasn't she? I had a tattoo of a little feather put on my wrist not that long after, actually. I tell you when it was. It was when I took my rings off, and I felt really bare. And I went to the tattoo shop and asked them to do me a little feather on my ring finger, and they just sort of, what I wanted was, it would be liable to smudge very quickly, so they suggested I put it on my wrist. And again, I look at it sometimes, and I a little smile. And at the time, feathers felt very poignant to me. Don't really believe in the afterlife, if I'm honest, but I found we both took comfort, didn't we, from the amount of white feathers we saw.
There was quite a few, though.
Yeah, there was quite a few. Yeah, it was a bit weird at one point when we first got together. We just kind of kept seeing them all the time and everywhere. We're like, is this them approving or not?
Talking of approval,
Yes, go on.
It's the subject of new relationships, isn't it? It's the because you're a widow, you're the world's property, and everyone has an opinion. So actually forming new relationships as a widow is probably better with a widow because there is a certain amount of flack that can come with it. Not that we've had it.
Yeah,
That's not been our experience at all, but we've heard stories. We've definitely heard stories.
yeah, we have, and often, the former in-laws or current in-laws, however you term them, they can be a little bit resistant to it. And there is a part of me that understands that, because if they've lost a child, the idea that the spouse of the child might, in their eyes, be able to replace them. The key word here is replace. I have not replaced Ben, and you have not replaced Sarah. We are in a completely different relationship. And it does. I was very, very lucky. Ben's mum, I think I've mentioned previously, I was a very big, brave girl, and I texted her. I was too chicken to ring her, but she responded in a very kind-hearted and loving way, and sort of said to me that she trusted my judgment and she wanted me to be happy, and that Ben would want me to be happy. And that one text from her has cemented this relationship between her. She's widowed as well. And it's cemented this relationship between me and her, and it has brought us closer. And as a result of that, we are still very much in contact. The children still see her and Ben's siblings. And just by opening your heart a little bit, I'm trying to find the right way to say it. I think sometimes when people are very resistant to the idea of somebody finding love again, all that happens is you divide a wedge. And also, why would you want to? Why, if you absolutely ask yourself in the bottom of your heart, why you would begrudge somebody who was widowed finding love again? I'm not talking about scammers and, dodgy, predatory potential encounters and things like this. I'm talking about love. And I just don't think anybody really should or would want to deny somebody the opportunity to love again.
But hopefully, by people listening to the stories in this podcast, and the things that some of these widows are doing to pick their lives back up and move forward, and how they're honouring their late spouses, I'm hoping it'll change the narrative.
Yeah, I think it is. And even today, I went for a walk with a lovely friend of mine, and she's not widowed, and she just said to me, "Oh, I'm just being so much nicer to my husband." And I think sometimes it makes you realise what we have the potential to lose in a blink of an eye. And whilst we're not always going to be sweetness and light to the people that we love, it makes you realise that there is a possibility they won't be there forever, and that you don't necessarily get any warning either. So I think people are taking from this the idea of just, I guess, grabbing life by the balls a bit, telling the people that you love that you love them, booking a holiday on a credit card because sod it, you can pay it off one day, right? All these kind of just fuck it moments, I suppose, because you don't know how many fuck it moments you've got left.
This is true.
Anyway, on that note, because that's a longer one than usual, isn't it? Chatty AF. Thank you ever so much for listening, everybody. We are going to be back on Monday, and you're going to be listening to a conversation between myself and a lovely woman called Sasha. Sasha moved over from Florida to be with her boyfriend in the UK in 2020, just before COVID. And sadly, he got cancer, and ultimately, obviously, he died, because that's why she's on the podcast. But she talks about him with so much love. I mean, we've even called the episode Love AF, haven't we? Because that is the level we felt of this kind of devotion that she has. She's quite freshly widowed. She's just over a year out. So it's a slightly different perspective to some of the ones we've had so far. But I think there's a lot to be gained, and I think you guys will find it really interesting. So listen on Monday. Let us know what you think at the usual channels. And as always, be kind to yourselves.
With one last little bit. If you could give us a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, that would help us in our rankings greatly, and even give us a subscribe as well. I didn't want to do the like and subscribe, but I've got to do the like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe.
So put us up on Instagram, find us on Facebook, and if you enjoy the show, give us a rating.
And actually, we are hurtling towards 15,000 downloads. So this is just incredible. Thank you so much to every single one of you that listens, downloads, and supports us, because it's incredibly validating, and it means that we just want to keep doing this. So thank you, everybody. And we will see you on Monday. So for now, take care of yourselves, everybody.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. Thank you for listening today.
We'll be back with you soon for more from the front line of loss.
But for now, as you were,